All right, welcome back. We are WEBD6201, that's client-side scripting at Durham in the winter 2020 semester, and it's week 13, part 1. We're going to continue with MongoDB and CRUD. However, before we get there, what I want to talk about is, let me just reduce this thing. What I want to talk about is the stuff that's due coming up for your Lab 5. So if you notice up on week 13, you have today's lesson, which is about Passport. Well, tomorrow's lesson, really. And then Lab 5 is up there, Passport Authentication. Remember that Lab 4 is due tonight at midnight. I've given you guys an extension to get that in. And for most of you, that should be okay. And I've also put the GitHub link, which I've created already for you guys there. But let's take a look at Lab 5 and see what that thing is about really quickly. And by the way, guys, if you have a question, again, you guys are live on YouTube, but you can always ask the question through chat, or if you feel like it, you can speak up and tell me what you want as well, and I can try and answer. Okay, so Lab 5, let's take a look at it. So Lab 5 is really extending the work we've been doing on Lab 4. And what you're going to be doing is you're going to continue with the Express Portfolio site, but you're adding something called the business contact list. Okay, so we have an example of users, and we have a kind of, when it comes down to it, we have a list of users we've kind of been looking at already. What we're going to do is we're going to secure that list, and that's what the majority of what this Lab 5 is all about. You may also have to create additional routes for the users to make everything go. So for the most part, again, you're going to make sure that the login and the other components are here to make sure things work out. Okay. Basically, you need a form that allows someone to log in, username and password. You have this information. I've already given you a sample of this form in the old HTML stuff that we use in JavaScript. So you can certainly reuse that form, or we can actually make a new one today together. I'm probably just going to reuse that form and repurpose it so it works with EJS, that kind of register and login. But the thing is, it has to work on the back end. So one is repurposing the view. So I'm assuming that, let's suppose you don't have it at all. You don't have this view. But what happens is it has to work like this. If you don't use your username, the correct username and password, as an example, it'll say, no, it's wrong. Please enter the correct username and password, or something is wrong, actually is what it should say. And it shouldn't tell you, by the way, your username is wrong or your password is wrong. If you give that kind of information to a prospective user, he's going to use that. And for a hacker, it's perfect. If you say, by the way, your password's wrong, then I can keep hacking, and I know if your username is right, keep hacking at it until I get the password right. Or if I know that the username is wrong, I can keep trying other usernames until I get one, and then try and hack at the password. So the best thing to do is say, username/password incorrect, so they don't know which one is wrong. That's the way to do it. So, or the information you entered is incorrect, something like that. Be as generic as possible, to give them a chance to know that something is wrong. So that's kind of what you're going to be doing, authenticating. You're going to create, in order for us to look at the business context, right now we have that contact-list, and right now it's completely unsecure, right? So there's no security installed whatsoever. And we're going to be, I'm going to be talking about making this a secure part of your app, right? For Lab 5. So that way, the only way you can look at your business list is if it's secured, okay? And we'll talk about using Passport, the Passport Local module. There's Passport Local Mongoose, and there's Passport. So the few different installs we have to do in order for it to connect and authenticate. Okay, so we'll talk about that. So your business list view is something that's going to basically provide a list of names, numbers, and email addresses in a row. Notice that there is no phone number. Since you already have a phone number, you just add email address to that. So you have to change up, one thing you have to do is change up your schema for your contact list to include email address as well, because the phone number is already there. Contact name, full name, like first name, last name is already there, and contact number is there, but email address is not. All right, so that's something you're going to have to change. Again, you'd have an update and delete button at the end of each row. We're going to almost there today in terms of getting some of this done. And you can already do a delete button, but we don't know how to do an add. We're going to be doing that part, adding in stuff to the form. The rest is pretty much the same. You're going to have to update the update view, which is something we're going to be working on today together in class. It's kind of a combined view. And you're going to see that. One of the things we're going to be talking about is I can use update and I can make it both update and edit. That's the one thing it can be. So it doesn't have, you don't have to have different templates for updating. Like I want to update something or I want to add something. It's the same thing. If you want to update or add or edit or add, it's the exact same form. We just swap out the names and it does very similar functionality. Okay, so we're going to be talking about how to do that today. You just have to incorporate it into your project. Internal documentation remains the same. Again, my expectation is that you're going to use GitHub and you're going to deploy to a cloud server. So that's kind of the stuff we have to work on to make sure that it's connectable from Heroku into MLab. So we're going to have to talk about that. Some people had issues with MLab last week. Okay, so that's really it. You have all of this week and next week to get it done. So this is a couple of weeks this time around, so it gives you more time. I know some people will leave this to the last minute. Guys, there cannot be an extension past this day because we don't have any more time. This is it. So next Friday, which is in the same week as your test, that's when this thing is due. Friday at midnight. Okay, so can't be any extensions past that. Now, one thing that I'll also be talking about now is the test. Any questions, by the way, for this thing, for the Lab 5? So again, you're adding an authenticated area, a secure area of your site that only you can access or people that are registered can access. Notice that I didn't ask you to create a register page. You don't have to do that for this thing. However, I'm going to show you how to make a register page today, but you don't need to. It's not part of the Lab 5. Think about this as if you already have a username and you're registering. Now, for you to allow me to test it, that's why it has to be up online, because if it's not up online, then I don't have the database of users that you've created. So one of the things you're going to have to do for me is when you hand Lab 5 in, you're going to have to give me a username and a password, right? Or else I won't be able to access it, right? Because there's no registration page required, okay? Alternatively, you can make a registration page that anybody can register, but it's extra work. And again, if you have no time, it's totally fine. I totally understand that. Okay, so that's really what you're doing in a nutshell. So any other questions at all? I'm just looking at the chat here, or you can pipe up and ask questions too. Okay, you might have a question about this later. Again, I think one thing I was asked is, what if we have questions during the week? Are you going to be available? So next week what's happening is there's no class on Monday because there's no lab because of the statutory holiday. Tuesday we have a scheduled slot for a lecture. I'm not going to be holding a lecture during that time. That is your test time. However, what I will do is during next week on Tuesday from 3 to 5, I will be available for taking questions, office hours, whatever you want to call it, and then so I can help you out with anything you have. So we can do ones-on-ones, or I can put together a little session for people who need to get together. If there's a lot of you who want to get together and ask questions, I'll say, a Q&A session opening up, but we won't do an actual lecture. It'll just be literally just Q&A. But really it's reserved for you to do your test, and so it'll be optional for anybody to connect with me next week. Okay, because that's just fair, right? Okay, so any other questions at all before we begin? So that's a good question, Heather. So Hamza. It's Hamza. Sorry. So the answer is you will be starting with you'll be testing locally with Mongo. That's what you should do, and then you're going to be connecting. You're going to be replicating the stuff you're doing locally online. Okay, so because Heroku will not work by pointing locally. It doesn't point to your system properly. I won't be able to access the database. So the only way that it can work is if Heroku points to MLab. So we'll have to talk about that today and tomorrow, or today or tomorrow, okay, to get that done. So that's really it in a nutshell. So that's the part where you might need some assistance because there might be some tricky pieces to it. But otherwise, there's lots of documentation online on how to connect Heroku to MLab. It is a free thing. There's nothing for you to spend money on. So please, if there's money involved if it ever asks you for a credit card or anything like that, it's not required. Okay, so you don't need to do that. And you don't have to install a package or a plugin or anything like that. If you have an MLab account and if you have Heroku and it points to the proper URI, it's just going to work. Simple as that. The thing that Heroku does for you, it actually is trying to help you by creating a little package that connects directly with Heroku. You don't have to have it that way. You can have it two separate things, and you're going to see as we get to it. So yeah, the answer is it's got to be up online and it's got to work from Heroku to MLab because it won't work any other way. Okay. Any other questions before we begin? Okay, let's get moving on the stuff that we weren't able to get to last week. I should probably mention something about the test. So again, I mentioned it kind of earlier, but I'll record it now. We're live, so I'll say it the way it is. So next week, your test, which is going to be true, false, multiple choice, is the final test, test number 3. It'll be released on Tuesday, and you'll have from Tuesday to Friday to get it done. Okay, so it should be about 100 minutes, and you'll have plenty of time to get done the test. So it won't be something that's a killer or anything like that. It'll be basically read out of the PowerPoints. So if you have the PowerPoints, to skim through them. It'll be an opportunity for you to just look at the PowerPoints again and read some of that material. That's what the test is going to be really about. More or less making you look at the PowerPoint so you can answer the question. So it's good theory. So I'm not going to try and invent new stuff out of my head for the test. It'll be like based on the material that I've given you. If I've recorded it or if we've practiced it, it's fair game to be on the test. If it's in the PowerPoints, it's fair game to be on the test. Anything outside of that, not going to happen. I'm not going to randomly put questions in there just to mess you up. Okay? And so that's what's the test in. So I think it should be fairly straightforward. Okay, so that's this part. I'm just going to close this down. We can come back to this later on if we need to discuss it more. So I put it up on DC Connect. You see the details here are up for this week, as well as the GitHub link. The GitHub link that we're using is based off of this link right here, WEBD6201 Winter 2020 Lesson 12. If you wanted to continue, you can also continue from last week's lesson. There's nothing that's going to be new there. I made a separate repo so I can keep these two things separately so you can see what we did last week compared to what we're doing this week. Okay, that's why I made two repos. Otherwise, you could literally just continue with the lesson 11 that I had up. Okay, so let's get to it. So we have VS Code, and last week. By the way, for people who are running NodeMon, some people are like, I can't run NodeMon. NodeMon's not required, guys. It's just a tool that you can use to make your life easier. But you can run everything you want on Node by just typing in node start, or node server.js. It'll work. And let me demonstrate that. So let's say if I just didn't have NodeMon, and if I just typed in node and then server.js, then it's just going to run. That's what's going to happen. Nothing's going to happen. It's not going to give you feedback, right? But it's going to run. Okay, so that's one thing it'll do. But NodeMon makes your life easier. That's what it'll do. Now, one thing we need with this project is we need Mongo running. So again, I'm just going to start my MongoDB. So again, Mongod is how we started. MongoD, D for daemon. Okay, so that starts. You can see that Mongo now is running a server in the background. You can't connect to a database locally unless this is running. So I'm just going to minimize this. And now if I do it again, just node server.js, the only thing we're going to get is anything we typed into the console. So you can see we connected to MongoDB. Now I like to use NodeMon because it's a good tool. So NodeMon, the difference between NodeMon and doing that, what I just did, is it gives you some feedback. It also automatically restarts your server when you make changes. And that's why it's a really cool tool, because in order for you to affect changes online, you have to reboot your server, restart your server every time. Every time I change anything in my server configuration, which includes any routes that I change, if I've changed any controllers, anything to do with the server code whatsoever, it's logic, you need to restart the server or it will not update. That is required, right? So again, if I run localhost here, localhost 3000, you can see that we're good to go. But the reason for this is because we're up and running, and I can go to any one of these, any of these pages that I've defined, and I haven't defined products or services. But there's contact us and login, and we don't have a login page yet, but we're going to go there today. One thing that we wanted to do is, again, we talked about going here and typing in contact list, so contact list. And when we go to contact list, we saw this last time, and we were able to delete stuff. My mouse just fell. We were able to delete stuff, no problem. We didn't get a couple things. We didn't have any check for us to delete. Sorry. Let's get back to that. Yeah, it closed it off. Lovely. Let's see if we actually stopped recording too. Oh. Am I still live? I think I'm still live. Let's go and check. I still it should be live. That's terrible that it did that. I'm pretty sure that, yeah, I'm still live. Okay, I'm still good. Yeah, I'm still live. Awesome. So wow, that really sucked that it did that. That's a terrible thing. Recently closed. Not that one. Let's go into history, recently closed, and I wanted to go into those 4 tabs. Hey, there you go. Okay, that's what I wanted. And YouTube, we're still streaming and we're still live, right? Awesome. Okay. Cool. So, yeah, so one of the things we couldn't do is we didn't do CRUD. All we had is the delete button, okay? And we need to finish off that part today. So that's the first thing we want to do, okay? So let's get to it. Are we able to do the test twice? Yes, I'll give you 2 attempts for sure. And we'll take the best attempt, just like we did last time. And the reason for that is just in case something screws up online, then I don't want you guys to be penalized in any way. I still recommend that the first time you do your test would be the best time to do the test, but that's just me. All right, so yeah, so we had some views, but we're under routes. In my, we had 2 controllers and 2 routes, right? So here's our controllers. We had our index controller and a contact controller. And let's take a look at our contact route. So right now, all we have is a read page and a delete page. Okay, so what we need is some way, somehow, we need to be able to come up with a page that helps us delete and create at the same time. Okay, so what we're looking for is some views for this. Okay, some views, because without the edit page or the add page as an example, then we can't do anything. So let's make an add page first. Okay, so I want to make the add page, and I want to talk about this. There's going to be a bit of a process to create it, but I want to explain how this works along the way. Okay, so again, if we look at the views, right, under views we have contacts, and under contacts all we have is the index.ejs, right? So right now all we have is this. So it gives us basically a list of everything. And what we want now is the add page. So I'm going to make a new page, a new file. We're going to call this add.ejs. It's really add edit, but we'll talk about this in a sec. Again, what we want to do is similarly to what we did here with our all these headers. Let's grab the same headers that we had before and go into our add page. Okay, so this is the headers, and the same thing goes with the bottom part. We want all these pieces because those are the same piece parts we're going to need for the add page, right? No difference in that from that perspective. Okay, there we go. So we have our head, our header, scripts, and footer, and now we're going to add in our the details for our the container for our stuff. So again, just like we did previously, notice that we had a container, a row, empty, the same offsets, all this same stuff is what we're going to have here. But we need to, it might be the easiest thing to just grab this whole thing. So just we keep the same style and the same divs, the div tags, and I'm just going to go into my add and just paste it in. Except I'm going to remove the table for a second because this is a new thing that we're making, okay? So what we have right now is something that looks like this. So we have a title, and now what we're going to do is we're going to make a form to add everything in. So we're going to do this. We're going to say form with a class of form, okay? And we're going to make, in this case, the we're going to add in a method. So again, why isn't this working? Remember, because Emmet won't work with EJS. It has to work only with HTML. So we can change it temporarily back to HTML to make Emmet work for us, so that it can kind of give us our shortcuts. So again, a form, and we can also specify attributes with square brackets. Remember, so we can say something like method is equal to post in square brackets, and if I click onto it, it'll actually do that, method post. Okay, so that's one. And then inside of our form, we're going to have a div tag as an example, and the div tag is going to have a class of form-group. Okay, and we're going to have two things in there. We're going to have a label and an input, okay, for this thing. So again, we're going to have our label. So inside the form group, we're going to have a label, and our label, besides that, so if I want to do something besides something else, I can use plus. So I can have an input as well. So I can have both those two things. My label can also have a class if I need it. My input definitely will. It'll be of type form control. Let me just kind of make it so that there's more room. So again, form-control. We want that as an input, right? And it's going to have an ID of, let's say, first name text field. First name text field. So that's what I want for my my control, right? And that should be it. Let's see how that works if I click onto it, right? So you see we got all that, and it just organized it a little bit for us, just a touch. Okay, that didn't quite work the way I wanted. That's supposed to be next to, not under. And there's something I could have done differently for this. Just, that's fine. So. Oh no, it worked. It just didn't space it properly. It did some funny spacing. That's all it did. So actually, it did work. It just did something that looks like this. Okay, so again, class form group for the div tag for, and that's this part. And here's our label. And then our label has a for, which is for first name text field. That's our label. And then we're going to say in here first name. So first name. Okay. First name text field. And then our input is going to have an ID of first name text fields. It's also going to have a name of first name. This is important. So name, first name. Okay. And it's going to be required. All right, so something that we're going to include. We're just going to use basic input for this one, right? So validation, we're not going to think about validation right now. We're just making a little form to make things go. And so this div tag is the first form group we're going to make. I'm just going to move this onto different lines, just so that we can see everything a little bit more clearly. I'm also going to make add a placeholder here. I know that's kind of something I'm adding in right now, but it should be something like, you know, like we said before, enter first name, and that's something that is just helpful for users when they look at a field. So that's what this does. And now that we have this this thing, let's space it a little bit, format it so that the div tag is kind of like a bookends for this one, almost like curly braces for me. And I can copy this same thing and put it in a couple more times. So I want it for last name text fields. So there's last name. Okay. And there should be last name text fields. Okay. Last name text field, and enter last name. And then the actual name of the variable is going to be last name, like this, lowercase l. Okay. And what else did we have here? We have a contact number. So that's the other one we have. And notice that the input type, one thing we missed, the type here is text for both. Okay. Input type is text. But for the next one, which is our contact number, and this is, we've done this before for our contact form. So this is our contact text field. Contact, we'll say contact number. Let's make it really big. Contact number text field. All right, and that would be this for the ID, contact number text field. And instead of type text, we should make it of type. Again, you see all the options we have, right? The one we want is tel for telephone, right? So that's going to give us the right keyboard on mobile devices. Okay, so enter contact number. And then this would be contact number, lowercase. Okay, so that's the 3 fields we need for our form to work. Okay, and then that takes us down to the last part of the form, which is we need some buttons. Okay, so we're going to make a button. So again, it's button with a, and we're going to make the type submit for a second, but the class is what I want first. So the class is going to be button and then button dash primary. The attribute we're going to put in is type, which is going to be equal to submit. That's the attribute. Again, this is all using Emmet. Okay, and then inside the button, what we want is a couple things. We want an I tag, right? That's going to be there as well. So then we're going to say that inside the button I want an I tag, right? And the I tag is going to have a class of FAS, right? And then I don't know if this will work properly, but we need to do it FA-edit. And if I press tab, you can see that hopefully everything is done nice. So there's the button, I tag. One thing that we're missing is what this thing says, which is submit. But submit shouldn't say submit, it should say add, because that's what we're doing for now, right? The add is what we're saying. But we can come back here and talk about this in a sec and see what other things we can do, okay? Also, we need an anchor tag, again, with a class of button and then button dash warning. So we'll make a yellow button. That's what that warning is. And we need an href tag. So again, we're going to say href, and we're going to say slash contact list. So okay, so and then inside the anchor tag, we're going to have an I tag with a class of FAS and then FA undo. Okay. And we could, if you want to complete it, you can put the inside there, you can have a cancel button, which is what we're looking at. So if you look at it, if I just do this, I can just click on this, and then you can have the entire thing working. So again, inside of the anchor tag, we have an I tag that says this. We have the cancel button. It'll look like a cancel button, but it'll actually be an anchor tag. And there's a reason for this. Okay, so that is the 2 buttons we have, and that's, in a nutshell, that's your form. That's your edit or add form right now. That's the title that we're going to get. Okay, so we have an add form. Any questions around this? Again, it's something similar that we've done before, but we need something for it to render, okay, when we add this in. So this is the add. And in order for me to add a new entry, I need some code for it. So this is the view. So we started with the view this time, okay? And now I need to go and add a couple things. One, I need to add a route for it, and then a controller for that route. Okay, so that's kind of the process that we're going through. So I'm going to go into, bear with me while I make sure I get this right. Okay, so I'm going to go into the add page now. So if I look at the contact, you can see that I have a get request to perform the delete action. So there's going to be, for the first time, two things that are going to happen, right? So these are just reading. Get, whenever we do gets, it just reads from the data, right? But now we're going to get some new stuff happening for the first time. So one of them is, I want to do a, for the add page, I'm going to make a get route, that's what it is, for the add page. Okay, and we're going to see if we can manipulate this so we can use for both. I'm going to say router.get, and then it's going to be /add. Okay, that's how it's going to look. And then what we want is, I want to look at the contact controller and display the add page. Okay, so I'll say contact controller. That's how about we do it right, instead of doing silly stuff. Contact controller, and then it's going to be display add page. Now notice that there isn't that kind of page. There isn't a page that display add page there because we haven't made that logic for the controller yet. Okay, so that's what you're going to put in there for the display. So remember, get always just gets information. It's used for displaying stuff. Post, which we're going to do in a second, and let's just add that in as well. We're going to do two different routes for the add page. So if I do a post request, so get, and the post request is going to basically allow for me to process. So we're going to say, we'll call this a post route for to process the add page. So notice, like, get, we show stuff, we display, and we'll say to display. So one displays, the other one processes, right? So it's the same page though. So router.post, right? So we use a different kind of and we'll say add. So the same exact URL, add/add, but this is coming from the add page. This is going to the add page. Think about routing for getting. We get stuff from the server. Posting, we post stuff to the server. That's the way you think about this. And again, we're going to make a new route called, or a new controller called contact controller, and then the actual thing is going to be process. The function is process add page. We don't have that right now, but we're going to make it. So those are the two pages we need to, the two pieces of logic we need to add to the contact controller. Okay. So in the contact controller, we have a display contact list, and we have a perform delete. Now we're going to add the other requisite stuff that we need for our controller. Okay, so again, this is assuming no login, no logout, right? So I'm going to display the add page first. So can anyone help me out to do this right? What do I start off with? And you can type it into the chat if you want. What do I start off with? What kind of structure would I have here when I start making my my logic? How do I start? Module.exports display add. Awesome. So again, module, good patterning, module.exports, and then we're going to make this new thing, display add page, right? And then that's going to equal to a request, response, and next. And we're going to make a arrow function, right? This is the arrow function that we're going to make. And inside the arrow function, we're going to have all of the logic for this page, right? So it's going to render, just like we would normally do stuff. We're going to say, we're going to go into contacts and then /add. All right, so that's what's going to be. And then we're also going to send a little object. So this is the object sending piece. It's optional, by the way. You don't always have to send an object, but we normally do, where we say that the title, right? The title is going to be add new contact. Okay, add new contact. So that's the title. That's going to change. And then that should be it, right? So that's the title. So that's display add page. And then for our process, module.exports, and we're going to basically do the same thing. We're going to call it this time process add page. And these names should make sense to you, right? I mean, there should be something that you name like anything else. Don't just come up with random stuff. It's got to make sense of what the server is doing for you at the end of the day, right? That's what you want. So again, what we want is, and question, would we render anything here? Well, the answer is we're not rendering anything. Now we're actually taking the information that we're getting. And where are we getting the information from? Well, we're actually getting the information from the web page, and it's coming into the request body. So this is kind of something that we talked about last time. Before we left, we said, hey, I'm getting this request. And this request has a list of parameters, and I'm looking at the ID for this request. Okay. So similarly, we're going to do the same thing here with our add page. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, let my new contact, I'm going to make a new contact, and we're going to say that we're going to access the contact model. This is the model we created last week. And in my new contact model, I want my first name, right? And by the way, to remind you of where I'm looking inside the models folder. And inside the models folder, I have these properties, first name, last name, and contact number. So I'm accessing these properties here. So now, if I go back, you can see that first name, let's keep it the same, first name, well, that is going to be equal to request, the request object. So the things that I'm sending to, when I click post, there's a request object that I'm sending, almost like a whole bag of stuff, bag of goodies, basically. And then the body of that request, I want you to parse the body, and I want the first name element that I pass in. Remember, I named it like this, first name inside the name property. I want that to be passed in. Whatever I get from the first name, it's going to be saved inside the first name property of this new contact model, this new contact class. Okay, next, I want the last name, which is just going to be request.body.last name. Now, I'm not getting any code hinting because that's the way it works at this point. And then finally, the contact number, which is going to be request.body.contact number. Okay. So one thing to do is to check that all these things match. So for example, again, if I look at the model, you can see that the contact model has first name, last name, and contact number. This is good. And then also, this is the same, first name, last name, and contact number, but also that this is the same. And that's the page itself, the view. So let's take a look at that view one more time to make sure. So again, it's like, look, here's first name. That's where it comes from. There's last name. That's where that comes from. And there's contact number, right? So that's where that's coming from. Okay, so that's first name, last name, contact number. Okay, so that's how it's going to work. Okay, and that's the route. The route basically says, and if you hover over now, it should give you information from the route to the controller. Okay, that's how it links together at this point. So again, you have two routes for the add page. One to show, the other one to process. Okay, we're not quite done yet. So yeah, we made a new contact. That's fantastic, but we have to add it somehow into the database. So how do we do that? Well, we're going to go to the contact model, right? And we're going to say, like we've done before, dot, and you can see all the different things it can do. So what we want is to create, right? So create, and we're going to pass in the new contact. New contact. That's the thing we're creating, a new contact. And then we're going to have a callback function, and we're going to say either it's an error or we're going to pass in the contact model, right? That's what we're passing in. And the callback function is going to say, well, if I have an error, and this is the same pattern, we're going to do a console log, and we're going to log that error. And also I'm going to do a res end, which means it's a serious error. We're going to stop we're going to create an actual 500 error right here when we do this. Else, if everything goes well, then what do I want to do? I want to refresh the contact list. And we've seen this pattern before in the delete, right? Where we're going to say that, just like we did right here, if I want to refresh something, I'm just going to point this thing back to the contact list that I came from. So I'm going to say res.redirect as an example, and then inside here /contact-list. Now, if you're going to go from the server, right, to a internal site, this is okay. Res.redirect. Res.redirect are actually almost like link. It's an internal link. That's what it does, right? You can also link to external links this way as well. So not something that you click on the button for, but actually something that is the server that's doing it for you. And really, that's it in a nutshell for adding. However, we're missing a button to get us to that add page. Because remember, if I go back, and let's see, first of all, are we crashed? No, we're good, right? If you remember, in our contact list here, so here's our contact list, we had this, okay? But there's no add button. The contact list now should have an add button up here if I want to add a new contact. So let's get that going. So again, back to our view. So in our view, we have our index. This is our index, nicey. And we have our header row, and it would be nice if we had a button right here between our title and our table. Basically say, hey, I want to, I'm just going to turn off my video, guys. I think we're getting a little bit of slowdowns here. If I want to, again, see my my ad, it's got to be in a specific spot. I recommend putting it near the top. So let's put it in there. So again, it's going to be just below the title, and it's going to look like this. We're going to have an anchor tag. Let's make sure it's not EJS for this thing, just so we can get some code hinting, and we can use emmet, right? Can't use emmet with EJS running. Like we said before, we have an anchor tag with a class of, it's going to look like a button, and then button dash primary. And then inside there, we're going to have a href property, right, or attribute that says /contact-list/add. Okay, that's what it's going to really do. And then what that will do is it'll make a button for me. But inside there, what I want is an I tag with a class of FAS, .fa plus circle. Okay, that's what I want. You could actually make it whatever you like. And then if I really want to, I can put the actual text that's in there, which is going to be add a contact. Okay, add a contact. Okay, and I'm going to just click on this to make it happen. So it's one long tag. I'm going to put the I tag in here, which is going to show me this. And then I'm going to break some conventions and put in a line break in here, like a little line that kind of separates the two things. Okay, so that is your add button, and you need an add button or else you can never get to that page, right? So if I go back now, so if I go back to this and I refresh, then we should see an add button like this. Okay, let me go back to that page so you can see it again. So all I did was add this in here, and that little add button plus the BR, the line break, right? What that did was it added a button. It added an anchor tag, actually. We encoded it or presented it as a button because we're using Bootstrap to help us with CSS. That's what this does for us. And then we're using this friendly, font awesome little circle with a plus in it, just to show good user feedback. Okay, so that's what this is. And now this should take us, if we did it right, to the add page. Now watch the URL up here. So if I click add, it takes me to this page, and what happened? How come I'm getting this this problem? And this all worked out, but some bad things happened. Why? Can anyone tell me what went wrong when I went to this page? And why do you think it went wrong? Okay, I think this is an important piece too, because sometimes you're going to get this and you're like, wait, okay, it's no CSS, but why? We did copy paste everything, right? I mean, what the heck? How come it didn't work properly for us? Well, my friends, it all comes down to routing. So let's take a look and see what happened here. So even if I refresh, you're going to see that if I go back to the server itself, and if I press Control Backtick, you're going to see a bunch of 404s. Why? This is what it's trying to do. It's going to try and go contact list, and then node modules, and then jQuery. Hold on a sec. Contact list, node modules. What the heck? This is all wrong, right? Because the routing is all off. Why? Well, it all comes down to how you're interpreting what's happening here. Okay? So remember, in my add page, my index page, okay, the index page works well. It added me to the add, but because add came from index, it's almost like we're one deep, one inside there. We're inside the add page. So these things right now is actually, well, wrong, right? Because it says go up one to partials. Go up one to partials. And then in partials, look at the head. As an example, look at the head. And that would be okay from index. That's what we did for index. See, index, exact same code. Go up one, go in there. Go up one, go in there. But what if we had to go up two? And let me explain this for a second. If I go up two, like this, okay, and I'll do the same thing for the other ones to see if this works. So why would I have to go up two if this is indeed the case? Why? Why? If I go back and refresh, what would that be the case? Now it says we didn't find these, but why would it cause this problem? Because it's causing a problem, right? I mean, it's not really finding the right link at all. Include inside include. Yeah. That is true. Right? So here we get a bit of a problem, right? So it's like I want to link to it, you know, and this is where we talked about before how this may not be the best strategy, what I'm doing here. An index page here and an add page there, right? Remember what we had here? How I had no issues with this whatsoever? But somehow when we go to this, we're having problems. Why? Because I have a template. Remember, this is just a template, right? And then when I click this, add, I'm actually going to another site, following another site from this spot. From this spot, okay? From my contact list. So let's go back to this and undo those changes for a second. Right, so, and then, okay? So if I go back to this now, it's not going to fail anymore. We're going to be good, but no CSS. What do we see when we inspect the page? Let's go look and view page source. Well, this is interesting. It shows us the following. We have our list and /content app CSS /node modules. Look, node modules are there. I didn't put node modules in there, but somehow, you know, it found it. And let's take a look at that because we're going, in order for us to get to this, we're looking inside partials, and then let's look at the head for a second. And it says exactly that, node modules, right? /. See that? So that's what's causing our problem, because it's saying, okay, on the same level as where we are, take a look at node modules, and that is not functional, right? So I still want to do the same thing. I still want to go to partials, right? And I want to look at head or whatever, but what should partials look like? Because maybe that is where the problem is. Now, is it going to break stuff? That's another thing altogether, right? And we have to watch how this works on the regular stuff. So what if in partials, instead of doing /, I just did a /. What does that do for me if I did this? Is that bad? Right? So if I'm going to save these, and I'm just going to do the rest. So footer, anything that I have a link to. So footer's okay. Bottom, that's okay. Header, this is okay. Nothing's wrong there. My script tags, that's not okay. So this is where I have to do some of this. What if I had to do something like this? And explain to me how this would work. If it works, does it work for all things or just this? So if I go back to here, and again, what I want to do is I want to kill my page source and just refresh. Do I see everything? And the answer is yeah, I see stuff. But what happens when I go back to my contact list proper or my home page? Is it messed up? Nope. So far, so good. What about contact list itself? So contact list looks okay. And when I click add contact, now that looks okay. So what happened there? Why was the path? Well, path is set to public. It's not that. It's just // means go to the same level. Go to the same level and then look there for that thing. Well, if I inject that / inside of my add page, it says, okay, go to the same level. And it's trying to find something inside of the add page through index. It's just a pathing issue. So / would fix it, but / might also cause us problems when we're on Heroku. We'll talk about that pathing later on. All right, so let's add in a new contact. Let's try it and see if it works. So we're going to say that we're going to add in a new superhero this time. So we've added Tony Stark and we added Peter Parker. Let's go on the DC side and add Clark Kent. So Clark Kent. And his phone number is 416. I know, very inventive. 555-5588. Why not? Something different. And then click, we'll try a couple things. First, we'll try canceling it. It should take us back to our page. No changes, right? We didn't add anything there. Okay, let's try that again. So again, we'll add Clark Kent. Okay, and then 416-555-5588. We said that's pretty good. We'll click add. And now it'll take us back here. And then, hey, look, there you are. So it added it in. Okay, so Clark Kent's in there as well. All right, so that's the add page. Okay, that's the add page. And that's a great place to put it up on GitHub. So let's put this up on GitHub. So we've added the add page in. We just modified the pathing for these things to make them all work. And we talked about the difficulties that you can face when you're doing this kind of routing, and especially with views. Okay, so these are all the changes. I'm going to stage all these changes. So again, I'm going to go back to GitHub. I'm going to click stage all these changes. I'm going to say added the add page. All right, so that's what we did, and we're going to check mark and then push. So that really is create. So we have create, read, and delete. Now we need update. And update, you're going to see, is very similar to the other two things, or the other three things that we've done. So we've got this. We want a delete, an edit here. All right, an edit button to show up. So first, we can do two things. We can add the edit button first. That's one thing we can do, right? Or instead of adding the edit button, we can do the logic. I think what I'd like to do in this case is we know the edit button is coming. I'm just going to make the edit button appear, and I'll talk about it a little bit in here. So I'm going to go to the view first and fix up this view, and then we'll talk about the edit. So, okay, go back. So I'm going to go into the view. So again, I'm going to go into my index.ejs in here and scroll down and notice that I had this, and then as well as an empty column right here. This is where the edit is going to go. So I want it to go in there. I'm just going to give myself a little bit of space. So I'm going to go with, change this of course to HTML, make sure it's HTML, not, and it was already there, but just in case it was EJS, make sure it's HTML so we get some emit support. Again, it's going to be a new anchor tag with a class of button primary, which is the blue button from Bootstrap. And then what we want is we want a href. That's our attribute. The href is going to be /contact-list/edit, and then what we want is, just like we've done down here, we want to inject the thing we want to edit. So we're going to say /equals %, equals, which is going to say, hey, now we're going to use, this is the EJS part. We want to look at our contact list, right? We want to look at that particular object in the contact list. We want to look at that ID, just like we've done before, right? And we want to close off the that particular directive. So these are little EJS directives. That's what these are. And that's kind of an opening tag. And the closing tag, equals, mean inject. That's what it means that we kind of inject stuff in there. And that kind of does the anchor tag. Okay, now inside the anchor tag, we're also going to have an I tag. And the I tag is going to have a class of FAS and then FA-pencil Alt, pencil, Alt, okay, so an alternate pencil. And then we can actually put the edit text, it'll be edit. Notice I put a space in there. And then if I click on this little link, then it'll actually, create the stuff for us. So this is actually our href. I'm going to put this class down in here so you can see it. And did it do it right? It did not. This should have been done in here. There we go. I made a boo-boo. Mistake. All right, so that is saying this. It's kind of like the delete button. It says, okay, let's look at the ID. That specific ID is the one that I want to edit. This specific ID is the one I wanted to delete. So the specific ID, okay? And if I save it and go back to our page and refresh, you're going to now see the edit button there too. So the edit and then delete. Now we're seeing a little bit of cramping happening here on the page, right? So part of it is if I change the size of my page, that's not going to be really it, all right? Why are we seeing cramping here? But because of how much space we've allocated for everything, okay? We really haven't allocated enough space for this contact list, and we can change that, right? So if you go up, and you can see that we said, okay, we want column medium offset 3, and then 6, what we want is 6 columns. So an offset of 3 means 3 columns on the left, and then 6 columns in the middle, that's 9, and then 3 columns on the right-hand side. We can change it. We can say, okay, we only want 2 offset, and we want 8 columns. And if we did this and go back, you can see now it's going to make it wider, right? And that looks a little better, I think. Okay. All I've done is just change the offset. So I made the offset 2 instead of 3. If you made it 3, all it's going to do is going to push. That means 3 and 8 is 11. It means you only have 1 column on the right side. If I did this, notice how you have space there. If I refresh, it's going to push it over a little bit more, right? When you refresh the screen. If I did it properly. Save. And then refresh. Well, not much actually. Let's try 1. Just see what that does. Save. Yeah, it's actually automatically processing it, which is okay. Let's just leave it at 2. Because it's a large screen as well. Okay, so that's what this does. I just made my little contact shape page, but you know what? This is not going to work. It's going to give me an error, right? It doesn't know what to do with a dot slash thing. And look what I'm getting here when I go to the top. I actually get the hash of my ID that I want to edit, right? So this is what I want to pass into the route. The route is going to take contact-list, edit, and then some kind of ID. Okay, that's what I want. So now that we have our page set for this, I'm going to go back and let's make sure that everyone's good. You guys are all good so far. Let's go into the routes and set that up. Okay. So can anyone guess what we need to do for our route? And I think it's going to be pretty straightforward, but I want you guys to think just a little bit. I know it's not a lot of thinking, but just a little bit. What do you think the routes should look like? Anybody have an idea of what I need to make my edit page work? And can anyone get creative? No one's feeling creative today. All right, how about I get creative? The edit page and the add page are pretty much the exact same. In fact, it's going to take the exact same stuff. When I display the page, right? When I display the page, there's a couple things that need to change, right? I mean, I could have a separate page for it, right? So in my views, I could have a separate page that says edit. But why, right? And it's almost like I want this thing to be add, edit, both add and edit. So let's rename this thing a little bit. I'm going to rename it. Let's do some creativity here with EJS. We'll call it the add edit page. Add edit, EJS. I'm going to have to change my routing for this in a second. Now this doesn't change. The actual route doesn't change, but what template I'm looking at does change. So inside of the contact controller, right? So in my contact controller now, you can see that when I render the page, it can't just be add anymore. It's going to be the add edit page that I'm getting to. That's what I'm actually looking at. That's the rendering portion that I was talking about, right? Okay, well, let's take a look at that add edit page for 1 second, being creative as we are. Okay, so if I look at the add edit page, what needs to change to make this edit? Well, the title definitely needs to change. Edit contact list is what's going to have to happen there, right? But what about this? This is the add button, right? So this could be button name. You could change this to button name as an example. So instead of add, it'll be edit. And that's pretty simple. So let's go back there and do that. And you also can be even more creative. If I go back to the edit, add, the title is there, right? It says title, right? But we could say, welcome to the add page, or welcome to the edit page. Or if you look at the contact, what it says inside of the controller, it says add new contact. Add new contact. So new contact is the same. Add or edit is different. So what if we just did this? So we took this away. We said add title, right? And then I went to my edit page, or my add edit now. We go to my edit page, and inside the add edit page, instead of title, right, we'll say add contact, right? So contact will be there, add will be there, right? And then add will be down here. So we can inject the title in here too. So we can say something like % equals to title %, right? And what this will do is it'll not only inject it up here inside the title, but also in the button name, which makes it nice and easy, right? So it's like one thing, one page to rule them all kind of thing, as opposed to have multiple pages with the exact same content and just the buttons changed and the titles changed. That's the only thing that would have been different, okay? So we can use one page. Then, if it's add edit and we put add, well, we can use the same kind of structure for our edit page. So again, going back down here, instead of display add page, we can say display edit page. It's going to go to the same add edit, but instead of add, we're going to say edit. Make sense? Straightforward? Maybe? Maybe not. Yeah. Okay. And let's look at the other stuff. So now module exports process add page, module exports process edit page. I think that's pretty much simple as that. So module.exports and then process edit page. I'm doing this in reverse order this time. We're going to make it so it's a request, response, and next object, right? Okay, so that is definitely true right there. But let's get back to the route for a second. I'll leave this in so we can see that it's going to give us some kind of response. But in our routing, we're going to have to do those two things. So one is, let's get the route to display the edit page. Okay, so router.get, you can see this, and then the link, the actual path is /edit. Right, that's to actually see the page, and then it's contact controller dot display, and then we can say that display edit page came up, right? That's the one we want to do for that one, right? And then we want to do a post route to process the edit page, okay? And this is where it looks more like the delete, right? So router dot post, right, and then /edit /:ID. So that means like, hey, get the ID that I'm also going to get from the page, and then send it to the contact controller dot process the edit page, which is this one. So that's slightly different than what we did before, okay, but not much. Similar to the delete, actually. All right, so now that we have a new piece of information, we have the ID that we want to process as well. We're going to have to use that params property again that we saw in the delete. We're going to use that in the edit. Okay, so let's go in there. So we're going to go back into the controller under contact.js and fix this page, right? Which is part of what we want to do. And hopefully you guys are still on board with what I'm doing. But this is an example of an MVC framework. So we're creating a MVC structure, so model view controller. We're separating our concerns. And we're also using processed views that are being created. So now here we'll do the same thing. So this let params ID, we'll do this again. So kind of copy this one. This is the same thing, right? So params ID, same idea that we had before for our process page. Okay, and then what we want to do, and this is funky, people get like freaked out about this. I'm going to say, okay, let my updated contact. So here's my updated contact. Well, that's equal to the contact model. So that kind of looks the same as what we did last time for our new, right? Well, in effect, we kind of are doing this again. But we're changing some information. We're saying, let's keep the ID the same. So the ID, we're going to keep it the same as the ID that we just got, okay? And then we're going to change our first name, all of them. We're not going to check which one changed. We're going to change them all. Why? Because we don't know which one changed, and it's hard to figure that out. So this is just an easier way of doing it. Last name. So just like we did last time, this is kind of the same as add, right? But the only difference is we're also modifying the ID, age, contact number. Okay, so that's the actual object, it's the updated contact, just like we did with the new contact, right? We're doing an updated contact, okay? And then we're going to use the contact model dot and then update, where we're going to search for, that's the first part. The first part is, what are we searching for? We're looking for an ID, right? That matches ID, the ID that we're looking for, the ID that we've passed into the parameter. We're going to use the updated contact as something we want to send, and then a callback function for the error, if there's an error. And if there's an error, that's the only time that we're not going to do something. We're going to say the same pattern, if error. Then what we want to do is console it out and res end, which is going to cause an error, a server error, the error itself. Otherwise we want to, we can actually have copied this whole thing, res redirect back and refresh the contact list. That's what we could have done right here, right? So why is this the same every single time? And could I make this different? I could probably copy this whole thing and make it a little function that I reuse over and over again, because it's the same here, it's the same there, and there's other places where it's the exact same too, right? So I could do that. It's almost like we want to check to see if there is error. If not, just refresh the contact list. And I can make a little method like that. We're not going to do that today. Okay, but you can see that there's duplication. Whenever there's duplication in your mind, you think, do not repeat yourself. Is there a better way? That's what you should say in your mind. Okay? And there is a better way. There's always a better way whenever you repeat yourself. Okay, cool. So this is cool. Let's see if it actually works. So again, I'm going to refresh the page, right? I'm going to edit me. Hey, this is not good. What happened? Okay, it says not found. It says C users Tom desktop. Where's it trying to go? It says server config app.js. Okay, remember this is the stack order that we're trying to do. So this is where it's coming from, and I'm trying to do a route. And notice that I'm trying to look inside my index, router index. And if you look through this, this big list of errors, as an example, somewhere or another, it's going to basically point to where the problem is, right, for your thing. But this is not a great place to do it. What's actually a better place to do it, and it says not found, 404, is actually inside of your module here. So let's just go here and see what it is looking for. So contact list, and then it says edit, and then this. Contact list, edit, and then this. That's what it's trying to do a get request for. Okay. So that's a hint right there of what it's trying to do. It's try to do it, right? Try to do it, but that's not what we're expecting. So let's go back to our page and see what happened. See what we did. First of all, let's take a look at the route to help us out. So let's see if you can determine what we did wrong. So here's a post, right? We did an edit, and then we went to the contact process edit page. This all looks good, the ID and all that stuff, right? One thing to note, we can also restart. So we can restart this to make sure that somehow things went awry, what happened, okay? So there's two parts to it, right? We want to get requests. We want to go to /edit. That's what we did, /edit for the get request. And post is what we're showing. Okay, so that's where the error is. Don't you see? Notice what's happening here. Okay, so let's go back to that route and see what's happening. Right. Well, we made a mistake, right? Not only are we going to process this ID, but we also have to display that ID too, because that's where it's taking us. So that's the one piece we missed. Okay, does that make sense? Because this page here, the delete page, well, that's actually getting the delete page to work, the process. This page actually processes the ID that we're getting. But this page, actually, the reason why we couldn't go there is because we were sending an ID to go, and we didn't have any place, we didn't have this route at all. So that's why we have to have this in there as well. We just had the edit. Edit is generic. I don't have an ID here. I don't know what I'm editing. Here, without this part, then what am I editing? I don't know, right? Adding is okay because we don't have an ID yet, but editing, we need the ID for both. All right, so let's go back to this and refresh it, and then click edit. Now we should see this, and now we have a bit of a problem, right? So this is another thing we have for the edit. What I'd like is for my contact information to come up here, right? Because I want to edit stuff, and I don't even know what was here before, right? So it didn't read any of the stuff that it came from. So it's almost like I don't just want this part, I want everything else too. And I want it to fill in the edit, that part, okay? So now, how do we do that part? Remember, we were a little bit creative, and we have to pay for our creativity a little bit now, right? So how would this look if we were actually going to have an edit page of its own, okay? So remember that what I want to do is I want to get the first name and last name as a value, whatever that value is, okay? So that's the one thing that I want. I want to be able to get the value back out of here. So this is the value that's showing, but what I want to do, and it's just give me 1 second while I just check one thing. What I want to do, I'm pretty sure, is I want to get the information back out of here. Okay, so we don't just get an ID, we get everything else too. Okay, that's what we get everything else too. So it's pretty simple to do, right? Again, if we don't have something that's in there, it's going to error out. That's what's going to happen. It's going to say, okay, I don't have that information, kind of thing. When I'm rendering the page, I need to, when I'm sending the information kind of there to that page, right? I'm sending stuff to the page to show. That's one thing. But when I process the page on the back end, when I edit the page, when I display my edit page, I need to render a few things that are different. Okay, so let's just think about that for a second. Okay, so what I mean by that is, let's go back to the page. So if I go to my controller, right, it's doing exactly what I'm telling it to do, right? I'm saying, hey, display the edit page, but all I'm doing in the display edit is I'm not really sending any information, right? I'm not even capturing any of the information. So what I'm actually doing is I'm getting information back, right, from my request. So my request is actually giving me this. It's giving me my ID. Okay? So that's what it's actually giving me. Even on the edit page, I'm getting this back. Whenever I click there, I'm getting this inside the ID. So I might as well use it. That's the first thing. Okay? And then I can use something else. I can use a find by ID. I want to be able to show the information I have. So I can say my contact model, right? Hey, my contact model. Let's find by ID. I'm looking for a specific ID now to find. Not just find, but find specific value. And I can say I want to look at an error and the contact object, right, that I'm getting, right? I'm going to call this contact object. You can call it whatever you like, okay? Okay, so what is the contact object? Well, and I'm gonna res edit this one. I'm gonna put the res edit inside there in a second, and you'll see what I'm talking about. Or I might make it an else in a second. So I'm gonna say that, okay, well, if there's an error, then again we're going to console log that. Okay. And we're going to res end. But what if there's not an error? Did I find my contact? And if the answer is yes, then I want to do a couple of things here. I want to say that when I render my page, I want to send in additional information. So let's grab this one, and I want to put this inside of here, right? So we're going to say show the edit view. Okay, and the edit view is not going to just have this add edit and not only the title, right, but also a couple of more pieces of information. So we're going to also pass in contact, which is going to be the contact object, whatever that contact object I get back, and anything else I want. Okay, so this contact object is the other piece that I'm missing, right, because I'm not sending the contact object back down to the page when I'm rendering it. Okay, so that's one piece. The next part is, what if I'm doing this on the edit side, on the add side, right, as an example, how do I not get an error? Because I won't always have the contact every time, right? So one way of doing that is thinking about that ahead of time. So imagine that both the add page and the edit page is going to have this contact property. It's just that this one is going to be empty. Okay, this one's going to be empty. And we can actually just put a value of nothing in there. So we can say that if I'm adding in, because if I don't put something there for the add page, because we're using the add and the edit, it has to have, if I'm looking for a contact like this, and if I don't give one, it's going to error out, right? So I can't do that. So I've got to send the same object to both the add and the edit view, right? So again, going back to the add view, I want to add in a contact, but instead of giving it anything, I'm just going to give it nothing. Like literally, remember, because JavaScript will allow you to put anything you want in there. So I just give it something empty, like this. See, contact has something here. Contact has nothing here. Okay, so why? Because now we have to edit our view. So I'm going to go to my view. So I'm going to go to this add edit view. And in the add edit view, I'm going to add additional information in here, right? So again, first name, last name, and first name, last name, and last name. Ha ha ha. This has got to also be corrected. We didn't catch that. I didn't catch that. This is contact number. Okay. First name, last name, and contact number. Yeah. So again, what I want to do here is inside the edit portion of the view, I want to inject a value. All right. So again, we have a placeholder, a name, and then we're also going to have a value before required, which we don't have yet for the add page. We're going to say value. Well, that is equal to, if we have it, right? We're going to say that we're going to inject a contact dot first name here. We're going to inject it if we get it from the you know, in here. We're going to inject it if we get it from the database. If not, it's just going to be an empty quotation, nothing. It'll be nothing, okay? Because we're injecting either nothing, empty quotes, or this contact first name, right? And again, we'll do the same thing for here. We'll take this value, copy it, and put it. Did I do it the right place? I did not do it in the right place. I meant to do that up here, and this will be last name. And then this part would be contact number. Okay, do you understand what I'm doing here? Anyone not understand, please let me know. Yeah, you understand or good? Is that good?
That's what I was thinking, so yeah.
Good. Yeah, so again, so contact list, contact first name, contact last name, contact number. We're only going to inject this when we have something. That's how it works. Okay, so now if we save this and then we go try it again, if I click edit, then we should get my information. Because that's how edit should work, right? I'm going to get the information, but the way I get this information is actually I'm doing a read from the database. I'm not copying it from page to page. I'm not passing in this back out. I'm not doing that. I'm not looking at request dot, the first name, last name, and contact number. I'm actually doing a round trip here. I'm getting it from the database. Okay, so here I'm going out, grabbing it, and then if I want to update it, let's try it. Let's make it so that it's like 554 and edit. You can see that now that changed, but nothing else. Okay, so that's nicely edited. Yeah. So that's edit. And now we have full CRUD. Create, read, update, and delete. Now one thing I want to change, which I really don't like right now, is the fact that I can just click on any one of these things and it just will delete it. And we have this code already, right? We have it. We did it for the products page last time. We did it with a little piece of code, right? It's got to be on the client side this time, not on the server side. So this is where we access our client side JavaScript. Remember that JavaScript is connected here. And if I press inspect and I look down to the console, I get app started. See that that is a thing, right? App started. So what I'm going to do here, if that's the case, is I can edit this part right here. So now what am I going to look for? I'm going to look for all buttons. For every button that has a button-danger class. Because that's what these are. Button-danger class. Okay? So how do I do that? Well, that's on the public script side under app.js. Now my app.js is like this, okay? And we have several things here. Now notice what we do. We have to swim to the right place. So I'm going to go down and I want you to help me fix this up. So I'm starting, I go app started, right? And I do my page name, yeah, right? And switch case contact, depending on my page name, then display contact content. That's what I've done. I want to make another switch in case my page name is what? Edit. Let's be clear about this. Let's do a console log right here when we're in there and see what my page name happens to be. Console.log page name. This is important because we have to put it in the right spot because we're still using Ajax. We haven't modified any of this stuff. This is all the same, right? All right, so cool. We'll refresh, right? And we'll go into inspect, and we'll see that we get contact-list. Yeah, contact list. So in the contact list, this is when we do it. When we get to the contact list, when I press the delete button, for any button that has an ID of or a class of button-danger, because that's what these buttons are. And to prove this, if we go back out to our page, into our view, so I go to our views, and if I look at index, we can look at the button that we made in here, has an ID class of button-danger, and it's an anchor tag, actually not a button. So anything that has a class of this, right, I want to ask a question, are you sure? That's what I want. Okay, JavaScript peoples, how do we do this? This is a JavaScript class. And what would you recommend? How would I start this off? Well, think about this first. So, well, let's start you off. I would do like this. I'll say case contact-list. In case it's that, then I want to do something. And I don't have this first, so we're going to just do this first. We're going to say that I'm going to display the contact list. So function display contact list. Okay, we're not really displaying anything actually. It's just like processing more than anything else. But let's just do it because we're going to keep the same structure as we had up there. Again, this whole page needs a cleanup at this point because we have extra information. So we're going to do that. So we're going to say, hey, display contact list. Okay. And one thing we want to do is modify the page so it says contact list as opposed to what it says now. All right. So again, if you just go up here to display contact, you can see that I did this, contact us. I can change this. So I can definitely want to do this part. That's got to be the way it's going to be going. So I'm going to go back down to here. So this is the one thing. So I want to change this to WEBD6201 and let's say contact list. Right? So let's see if it does this, just this part. Okay, I think this is important to try. So again, if I refresh, right now it says contact list. You can even see that that's changed. But now it says WEB6201 contact list, and that's been changed by JavaScript alone. Okay? Cool. So we have contact here. And now we also have an area where we've already done that check. Are you sure? Look at this. We used jQuery for this thing. We made a button. So we're checking for this reset button, .click. How do we write this part, which is exactly the same? How do we do this? How do we do this in our JavaScript stuff instead? So we want to look at an anchor tag, and we want to add event listener, right? So we're going to say that I'm going to tie into something. So we can say that let my delete buttons is equal to document.getElements by class name, all elements by class name, and the class name is going to be, and this is very important that the class names are here, right? So button dash danger. That's the class name that we're looking for, okay? So we're getting a reference to this, to all buttons like that. Okay, before we do anything, let's do a console log and look at those buttons because we don't want to delete something by accident, right? So let's see, do we get a console log of all those buttons? And if I refresh, now you're going to get a list of buttons. These are all the buttons, and you can see that when I click onto them, they all appear. These are all the buttons. So no matter what I press here, I'm getting a list of buttons. Okay, cool. So cool, we know we got that. So we can say that delete buttons dot add event listener. I want to add an event listener to all the buttons. All right. When I click on any one of those buttons, then I want to do this exact same thing. Nothing different than what we did already. In fact, I can even copy paste some of this stuff like this. It's the exact same as jQuery. Like I said, jQuery is cool, but we can do a lot of stuff without jQuery. So E, prevent default behavior. We don't want it to do anything yet. And then I want to confirm. I want to say, are you sure? Am I sure? And if I'm sure, then I'm going to do what I'm supposed to do. So how do I now delete finally, right? I want to process that delete. So there's a way of doing this that we can do it so that we code it smartly again, right? Can anyone think of how to do it? I'm looking over here. So we can reverse this a little bit, right? We can reverse it. Instead of it being confirmed, and we can prevent default behavior out here, right? We don't have to do it in here. We can say, hey, if not confirmed, are you sure, right? Then if it's not confirmed, we can prevent default behavior. And then what we can do is we can window.location.assign and we can slash contact list. We'll put them back to the contact list. So we'll refresh the contact list. This is what this part does. So we'll say refresh contact list. Okay? Yeah? Does that make sense? So let's read this a little bit differently, right? So we say, okay, if I can't confirm, so if confirm is not okay, if confirm is okay, just skip all this and just do my deletion, right? However, if confirm is not okay, then prevent the default behavior. That's another way of doing it. And then relocate us back to the contact list. Okay, let's see if that works. So otherwise, we're going to delete something. So first, I'll refresh. And it says, okay, delete buttons add event listener is not a function. Delete buttons add event listener. So notice that we have to make sure, before I even did anything, right? So here's delete buttons, right? And what did I do wrong? What would you have done differently here? Can I do this? I want to add an event listener to all of my delete buttons. Here's my delete buttons. Every one of them is going to have that. That's what I want. Delete buttons itself is a list of buttons, right? So can I do this without using jQuery? Can I say that for each button in buttons, add an event listener? That's really what jQuery is doing, right? So how do I code this differently? Instead of doing it this way, I could say, because remember that for each, right? So I say, okay, if I coded a for each here, then for each is going to say, I need an array. Well, I have an array, delete buttons. Delete buttons, right? That's the array. For every button in delete buttons, right? And then take all this and put it in there. How about that? Does that work? And first we want to see, do we have each button? Because we want to go loop through each of the buttons that we have in that little array, right? And let's see if we get an error here again. So again, refresh. Okay, so now delete buttons dot for each is not a function, right? Why? Why? Remember we had this problem before. Delete buttons itself, is that an array? Delete buttons, or is it something else? Did I spell something?
You have to use another like for loop.
Yep. We can try another one. Let's try another one. So let's try. Okay, so again, we have for in, for each, and for of. So for in looks like this. That's not one that we want to use. For of is this one. So this is like for every button of delete buttons. Okay, and then we'll just cut this out. So if we did that one, that didn't work. But what about this one? Would this one work? And again, we'll see it right away because I'm not going to click a button unless I know for sure I'm going to get that. So refresh, and now we're good. Okay, so now this looks like we've looped through. This looks like it's looping through each of the buttons in the delete buttons array, the collection. And then if we click on the last one we got in, just to test it, let's click on Clark Kent. It should pop up a little thing that says, are you sure? If I press cancel, it's all good. Clark Kent stays, right? If I refresh, we're good to go, right? However, if I delete Clark Kent and press OK, then Clark Kent, goodbye. Make sense? And let's add him back in. So again, it's pretty simple.
jQuery to do this.
I wanted to do it without jQuery, but that's a good question. But you could. I could totally use jQuery for this.
Yeah,
but
it would have taken like 2 seconds.
yeah, absolutely. But I'm saying let's try and do without, right? 9 or 5588. I think it was. Okay, and if I edit them, then I can go back there and edit it to 89, let's say, and press edit, and that all works nicely. Everything works. So now we have full CRUD plus a bit of a check, which is what we want to have for when we do any kind of deletion, because we don't want to just automatically delete anything ever. It's bad user form, bad user experience. If I go in here and delete something, it should always give me the option, are you sure? Because once it's gone, it's gone. Can't get it back. There is no undoing. Okay, at least not the way we've written it right now. And the great thing is no matter what we click, edit, right, or edit, or edit, we always get the right information in there, which is the important part. Okay, so let's review before we move on. So again, I did this strictly with JavaScript, but just like Sterling said, if we go back up here, we could just have done this, exactly this, except instead of reset button, we could have looked for button danger and put that in there like a class, and we would have been able to just do this in these short lines. However, we're just able to do with an extra line or two. We're good to go with JavaScript, plain old JavaScript, no jQuery, if you want to as well. So those two examples of jQuery and no jQuery. Okay, so that is our CRUD right now, and that is, for the most part of the things you need to do for your Lab 5, right? However, I also added one thing that you have to do is you have to redo the view, so it also includes an email address, which this one's not. This only has first name, last name, and contact number. You have to figure out how to do an email address and how to rejig the view so it has extra room, and so I can also keep track of my email address in the database, not just these 3 pieces of data. Okay, cool. So how the heck do I do this up with Heroku, right? Because I think this is the last part, and do we have time for this right now? 7:49. Yeah, maybe not. Sorry, it takes a little longer than I don't want to rush that part, and it's a piece that we need. I'll leave that for tomorrow. So I'm going to shut down all these things, and I have some changes. We added edit. So added edit page to the project. That's what we did. And then we're going to go here and push. So now you're going to have everything up online for the stuff that we've done. It's not secured at all right now. Hamza, there is no security right now. Zero security right now. We're going to secure it tomorrow with Passport. That's what we're going to do. I'm just going to stop sharing for a second. And I'm going to go back up to me. So tomorrow, what we're going to do instead of what we did today, and I'm just going to minimize this so you can see me. What we're going to do tomorrow instead of what we did today is we're going to add Passport. Okay? So if you look, and again, I'm going to just pull up. I'm just going to undo this for a second and pull this up again and just do a share screen one more time. If you look at the our week 13 activities, and if you go to contents for week 13, you can see that I have this authentication using Passport PDF document, and that's going to be the topic of tomorrow's conversation, right? So I'm going to start off with that. So if you look at what that looks like, and I'll just pop that open right now. So if I go to authentication with Passport, we have to download a new module. All right, so this thing called Passport, actually, right? And it looks like this: npm install passport --save. So something new we're going to have to add. And what we're going to do is this new module is going to allow us to create authentication. Again, within our code. What we're also going to have to do is create a new user schema. Right now, if inside of our code itself, if you notice, if I go back to here and look at, let's just collapse everything. So here's our server. Inside of our server, we have only one model, the contact model, right? In my contact model, I have these things. So you're going to have to add another property here and modify all the views and the information that's inside of the controllers. That's part of what you're doing in this project in Lab 5. But the way it's going to be secured is you're going to have inside of the config app.js. Right now, we only have a single router, right, for index. The index router, and we have the contact router. But we also need the user router, right? And the user router we removed, but we're going to put it back, and we're going to have another set of routes that are going to handle users. Okay. So again, one thing we said is I don't need full CRUD on users. We'd be doing like full CRUD twice, like actually adding a user through our views. You'd have to have views for that, like some ways of adding a new user, like registering a user, all that kind of stuff. We're not going to handle that in your Lab 5. And the reason, not because I don't think it's interesting or good to do, it's just we're going to run out of time with all the stuff that I'm asking you to do. And we've only got one short week to do it, right? And there's some complications when it comes to adding things in. And I want to make sure that we're all good to go with some of the stuff we've been talking about. Okay, so tomorrow we're going to start talking about how do I install Passport in here, okay, and then how do I configure different strategies. So Passport has a couple different strategies that we can use. We can use a local strategy, which is local username and password authentication, and password can be email if you want or something else. And then we can also use something called Oauth, which is a strategy where we use another provider, a third-party provider like Google or GitHub or Facebook or Twitter or Instagram or one of those third parties to authenticate our users for us. It's become very popular lately, and a lot of services use it. Why? Because it's like this additional trust relationship that we're getting. Think about what's happening whenever we use Oauth. If I trust Google, then if Google trusts the user, then I should trust the user, is what it's saying. That's that third-party relationship that we're doing. So we're not there yet. We're going to talk about it tomorrow. I'm not going to get you to install or use Oauth. That is, you're on your own to do that kind of stuff. However, if I had another couple of weeks, then yeah, we would do Oauth. I would do a whole user CRUD. I could create different sections that are hidden and so on. We're not going to do that. We're just going to make basic user authentication tomorrow, so you have everything that you need to put your Lab 5 together. Okay, that's what we're doing. All right, questions around anything we talked about today. We talked about the rest of it. So notice we took like 2 days to do user CRUD. And I know up online it said only 1 day. There's no way you can do 1 day. Just not, it doesn't happen like that, right? So any other questions at all? All right, guys. Yes? Sorry?
I know.
No questions? Okay, great. Guys, thank you so much. I will see you all tomorrow, and then we'll get into user authentication. We'll use the same project as we have today. So I'm going to stop recording this. I'm going to put this up on any changes we put up on GitHub. I think we should always have that. But otherwise, that's it for me today. Let me just stop recording. If you have any questions, I can continue with any other. I can stay online for a little longer, okay, for people who need to stay. Otherwise, for the rest of you, thank you so much, and I'll see you tomorrow. All right, so let's just stop recording.